I spent my whole life putting Aaron first. When his father died young, it was just the two of us against the world. I worked 2 jobs, waiting tables during the day and cleaning offices at night, just to keep the lights on. I missed birthdays, school plays, and Sunday picnics, so that Aaron could have new sneakers, fresh notebooks, and enough food in his lunchbox. I never once complained, because when you're a mother, sacrifices don't feel like sacrifices. They feel like breathing. I lived in the same small house for nearly 40 years. White siding, chipped-in places, a garden that bloomed wild every spring. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And every crack in the wall, every faded photo on the mantel, was a piece of a life I had built with blood and hope. Aaron grew up there. He had his first birthday party in that backyard. He scraped his knees on that front sidewalk. He brought home every broken bird, every stray cat, convinced we could save them. I never once said no, even when it meant stretching grocery money to buy pet food, even when it meant emptying my savings to cover his college tuition. "I'll take care of you someday, Mom," he promised me once, arms tight around my shoulders. He was 10 years old, voice thin and full of certainty. I believed him. I held on to those words like a life raft through every lonely birthday, every missed Mother's Day call when he got busy, every Christmas card that arrived late, unsigned except for a quick, "Love, Aaron." Because I was his mother, and mothers believe, even when they shouldn't. It happened on a Tuesday. Aaron came by the house unexpectedly, his arms crossed tightly across his chest, his eyes darting around like he didn't want to be there. At first, I thought maybe he came to take me out for lunch. Or maybe, foolish hope, he just wanted to sit and talk like we used to. Instead, he stood awkwardly in the living room, shifting his weight from foot to foot, and said the words that still ring in my ears. "Mum, I've made arrangements." I blinked, confused. "Arrangements?" He cleared his throat. "There's a really nice nursing home just outside of town. It's time you had some real help, professional care." I sat frozen in my chair. I wasn't sick. I wasn't senile. I was tired sometimes, yes. I moved a little slower. But I still woke up every morning and tended to my little garden. I still made my own meals, paid my own bills. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't ready to be thrown away. But Aaron kept talking, steamrolling right over my stunned silence. "They have activities, and full-time nurses, and meals. You'll be better off there. Plus, we already started the process. You're all set to move next week." We, he and his wife. Decisions made without me. Plans signed without asking. My voice, the voice that had sung him to sleep, cheered at his graduations, cried at his wedding, meant nothing now. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words stuck in my throat, because in that moment I realized he wasn't doing this out of love. He was doing it out of convenience. I had become a burden, an inconvenience to be filed away in a building with wide halls and sterile walls, out of sight, out of mind. He left soon after, saying he was too busy to stay longer. I sat alone in the living room, the afternoon light dimming around me, the clock ticking loudly in the silence. My home, the life I had built with calloused hands and sleepless nights, was slipping through my fingers without so much as a discussion. And my son, the boy I loved more than my own breath, was handing me over like luggage. The week leading up to the move felt like a blur I couldn't stop. Aaron sent over a couple of movers, men I had never met, to box up my life. They didn't ask what was important. They didn't know the stories behind the chipped teacups or the threadbare quilt on my bed. They packed my wedding photos in newspaper without a second glance. They tossed books into cardboard boxes like they were junk. Aaron didn't even come to supervise. He was busy with work, he texted. And just like that, 40 years of memories were folded into boxes marked MISC, in black marker. The nursing home wasn't ugly. It was new, clean, smelled faintly of lemon disinfectant and sadness. The staff were polite, but rushed. Residents sat slumped in wheelchairs along the hallways, staring blankly at the walls. The common room played old TV reruns that nobody seemed to watch. Meals were served on plastic trays, lukewarm and bland. I was assigned a small single room, white walls, thin bed, one window facing a parking lot. My things were stacked against one wall, boxes I didn't have the heart to open yet. I sat on the bed and stared at them, feeling more alone than I ever had in my entire life. This wasn't care. This wasn't love. This was exile. Aaron visited once that first week. He stood awkwardly by the door, checking his watch constantly. "Well, at least you're settled," he said, with a tight smile. I nodded silently. He didn't ask if I was happy, didn't ask if I needed anything, didn't sit long enough to even see me properly. He left after 15 minutes, citing a meeting downtown. I watched him walk away through the glass doors, his figure getting smaller and smaller until it disappeared altogether. He never looked back, not even once. That night, I unpacked one box, just one. Inside was a framed photo of Aaron at age 6, missing his 2 front teeth, grinning proudly. I set it on the small dresser by my bed. Then I turned off the light, pulled the thin blanket over my shoulders, and stared at the ceiling. I had spent my whole life building him a home, and now I had none. The days at the nursing home melted into each other like grey rain clouds. Breakfast at 8, bingo at 10, lunch at 12, medication at 2, dinner at 5. Lights out by 8 p.m, even if you weren't tired. There was no laughter here, no real conversations, just the shuffling of feet, the beeping of machines, and the quiet hum of loneliness. Some residents still had visitors, grandchildren who came with balloons, sons and daughters who brought homemade cookies and stories from the outside world. But most, they were like me, forgotten. I tried at first, tried to smile, tried to join in activities, tried to pretend I was grateful for the professional care Aaron had promised would make my life better. But inside, something small and vital was breaking. I wasn't old enough for this life yet, not in my heart. I still wanted to wake up and smell coffee in my own kitchen, still wanted to hear birds outside my window, not delivery trucks. I still wanted to be someone's mother, not someone's obligation. Aaron's visits became even less frequent. Weeks passed without a call. On holidays, I received a card, unsigned except for a printed signature. I used to wait by the phone. Hope would flicker every time the nurse's station rang. But after a while, I stopped hoping. Because hope hurts more when it dies slowly. Then, one rainy afternoon, when I thought I couldn't sink any lower, someone knocked on my door. Not a nurse rushing to hand out pills, not a volunteer dropping off crossword puzzles. It was her. The young nurse who would change everything. Her name was Hope. Fitting, I thought later. She wore blue scrubs 2 sizes too big, her brown hair twisted into a messy bun, and she had the kindest eyes I had seen in years. "Hi, Eleanor," she said, smiling like I wasn't just another patient on a chart. "Mind if I sit with you for a bit?" I nodded, surprised. She didn't come to take blood pressure or hand out pills. She didn't glance at her watch or scan the room like she had somewhere more important to be. She just pulled up a chair and sat across from me like I mattered. At first, our conversations were small. The weather, books we liked, her favorite coffee shop across town. But soon, the talks grew deeper. Hope told me about her life, how she had been pushed away by her own family because she chose to become a nurse instead of following their dreams for her. "Law school wasn't for me," she said, laughing softly. "I wanted to take care of people, not argue with them." Her voice cracked a little when she said it, and I recognized that crack. It was the sound of someone who had given love and been repaid with abandonment, just like me. Hope treated me differently than anyone else at the nursing home. She didn't talk down to me. She didn't rush me. She didn't see an old woman. She saw me, the real me. And little by little, something inside me that had withered started to bloom again. Because love doesn't always come from blood. Sometimes it finds you when you least expect it. In the form of a young woman with kind eyes and a heart bigger than the walls that tried to cage you. Hope started bringing small things to brighten my room. A vase of fresh flowers, a book of poetry she thought I'd like, a photo of a puppy she wanted to adopt someday. She even baked cookies once, real homemade cookies, warm and buttery, and sneaked them into my room after dinner. We laughed like girls at a slumber party, hiding the evidence. For the first time since Aaron moved me here, I felt like a person again. Not a patient, not a burden. Just Eleanor. Over the next few months, Hope became more than just a nurse. She became my daughter in every way that mattered. She listened when no one else cared. She laughed at my stories, even the ones that rambled too long. She brought me little bits of life from the outside world. Music, playlists, postcards, fresh strawberries when they were in season. When my birthday came around and no one from my real family called, Hope surprised me with a tiny cake lit by a single candle. "Make a wish," she said, grinning. I stared at the flickering light and realized I didn't have to wish. I already had what I needed. Real love, real family. Chosen, not born. One evening, as we sat together, watching the sun dip below the trees outside my window, I asked her a question that had been forming in my heart for weeks. "Hope, do you ever wish you had a real family?" She smiled sadly. "Sometimes. But then I think maybe family isn't something you're born into. Maybe it's something you find along the way." I nodded, feeling a lump rise in my throat. Because that's exactly what we were. Found family. Bound not by blood, but by kindness, by loyalty, by the simple act of choosing each other when no one else would. That night, after Hope left to finish her shift, I sat by my small desk and pulled out a piece of paper. Then I picked up the phone and called my lawyer. "It's time to update my will," I said. "I have a new daughter now." The lawyer didn't question me. Maybe he heard something in my voice that told him this wasn't a decision made out of spite, but out of survival. We met quietly at the nursing home, in a small meeting room that smelled faintly of lemon polish and dust. I handed him the original will, the one where Aaron was listed as sole beneficiary. I watched as he flipped through the pages, eyebrows lifting slightly, when he saw what I had once been willing to leave behind for a son who no longer saw me as anything but an inconvenience. "You're sure about this, Eleanor?" he asked. I didn't hesitate. "I'm sure." We drew up a new will. Every penny of my savings. Every piece of jewelry that had been in my family for generations. The few valuables that hadn't been boxed up or discarded. All of it. To Hope. I also made another request. "I want her to be legally recognized as my daughter," I said firmly. He explained it would take some paperwork, some extra steps, but it could be done. I nodded. Do it. Because sometimes, family isn't a bloodline. It's a lifeline. and Hope had thrown me one when no one else even noticed I was drowning. By the end of the month, it was official. Hope came to visit after her shift one evening, tired and smiling, her hair pulled back with a pencil. I handed her a small envelope. Inside was a simple note, written in my careful, shaky handwriting. Dear Hope, you are my daughter now, in every way that matters. Thank you for seeing me when others didn't. Love, Mom. Tears filled her eyes. She hugged me tighter than I thought my old bones could bear. And for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't feel abandoned. I didn't feel disposable. I felt chosen. And that feeling was worth more than any mansion, any car, any inheritance I could have ever left to someone who didn't value me. It wasn't long before Aaron finally showed his face again. Not out of guilt, not out of love, but out of greed. He arrived on a sunny afternoon, dressed sharply, carrying a bouquet of cheap supermarket flowers. The same son who hadn't called in months now stood smiling at my door like the prodigal child come home. I sat calmly in my chair by the window as he walked in. Hi, Mom, he said, voice full of fake warmth. How are you feeling? I smiled politely. Living, I said, breathing, being. He chuckled nervously, pulling a chair close. I was thinking, he started, clearing his throat. Since things have settled down a bit, maybe we should talk about, the future. Your estate and stuff. There it was. Not 5 minutes into his visit, and already he was digging for gold. He thought he still had a claim over the life he abandoned. He thought I would be grateful for crumbs of attention now that he saw a check waiting at the end of the road. I let him talk. Let him spin his shallow words about taking care of everything and making sure things are handled properly. And when he finally paused, waiting for me to say what he wanted to hear, I leaned back and smiled. You don't have to worry about any of that, I said. He looked relieved, almost smug. I let the pause hang heavy in the air before finishing. I already have a daughter taking care of it. His smile faltered. He blinked. A daughter? He repeated slowly, like he couldn't quite compute what I was saying. Yes, I said calmly. Her name is Hope. The color drained from his face. You can't just... I can, I said, voice steady. And I did. I pointed to the small frame on my dresser, a photo of Hope and me at the garden, both of us laughing, arms wrapped around each other. She's the one who stayed, I said. She's the one who chose me, not because she had to, because she wanted to. Aaron stammered something about lawyers and rights and obligations. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I simply turned my head back toward the window, and in the silence that followed, he finally understood. The door he thought would always be open had quietly closed behind him. Aaron left without another word. No promises to visit soon. No dramatic apologies. No offers to fix what he broke. Just a slammed door and the sound of hurried footsteps fading down the hallway. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't feel vindicated or victorious. I just felt free. Because the truth was, Aaron had left me a long time ago, long before he ever packed my life into boxes and moved me here without asking. He had left the moment he started seeing me as a problem instead of a person. The moment love became a burden. Hope visited later that evening, bringing a small pizza in a brown paper bag and 2 sodas in glass bottles, like it was a holiday. She must have seen the lingering sadness on my face because she didn't ask what happened. She just hugged me tighter than words could. And somehow, that simple act of kindness filled the empty spaces Aaron left behind. We sat by the window, eating pizza slices on paper plates, laughing about silly things. The bad TV shows the nursing home played. Hope's disastrous attempt at baking bread the week before, my terrible taste in modern music. I realized then that blood doesn't make someone family. Loyalty does. Love does. Choice does. A few weeks later, I officially changed my emergency contacts, my medical proxy, my legal guardian forms. Everything now listed Hope. I gave her the keys to a small savings account she didn't even know I had. Money I had saved for a future Aaron had thrown away. Now it belonged to her, the daughter who showed up when everyone else disappeared. And when the sun set that night, painting the sky outside my window in soft gold and pink, I realized something else too. Maybe it wasn't Aaron who abandoned me first. Maybe I had abandoned myself, waiting for love that was never coming, holding on to loyalty that was never returned. And now, finally, I had chosen better. I had chosen me. The seasons a few weeks later, I officially changed my emergency contacts, my medical proxy, my legal guardian forms. Everything now listed Hope. I gave her the keys to a small savings account she didn't even know I had. Money I had saved for a future Aaron had thrown away. Now it belonged to her, the daughter who showed up when everyone else disappeared, hifted quietly after that. Spring melted into summer, the trees outside my window bursting into full, bright green. Hope brought me flowers every Sunday. Sunflowers, daisies, wild bundles from the farmer's market. My room no longer smelled like bleach and sadness. It smelled like life. I lived simply. Mornings filled with soft music and crossword puzzles. Afternoons spent reading or watching birds build nests outside. Evenings sharing silly gossip with Hope over tea and cookies. It wasn't the life I had pictured. It was better. Because it was real. Because it was built on choice, not obligation. Because it was filled with people who stayed, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the first stars winked awake, Hope sat by my side holding my hand. Her hand was warm and steady, the way a daughter's hand should be. She didn't cry. Neither did I. There were no big speeches, no final regrets. Just a quiet knowing between two souls who found each other when the world had turned its back. When I finally closed my eyes for the last time, I wasn't scared. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't empty. I left this world loved, respected, and at peace. And that, I realized, was the greatest inheritance of all.